Hi, I'm Veruschka. I'm a healing arts coach on the Big Island of Hawaii, and I love talking to people who inspire me around the globe. And somehow the internet's made it possible for me to get to know wonderful human beings who are really living out of heart courage. And one of these wonderful beings I'm speaking to today is in Tokyo, Japan. Marci is an American living abroad, and I'm going to ask her a bit about her path. And I know I've witnessed her going through some different portals this year and have benefited from some of the wonderful work she does. So I'm really excited to speak to her today. Welcome, Marci Kobayashi. I would love to hear what you call yourself, what titles you have for yourself right now, and also how on earth did you get to Japan as your home?
Oh, thank you. So I'm Marci Kobayashi, and I am from the US. I'm originally from Washington State. I grew up in a small town just south of Seattle. And I'll answer your first question, or the last question, I guess. I got to Japan originally as a student. I decided to study Japanese when I was in college, and I thought it would be a good idea to study abroad. So I came over as an exchange student, and the second year that I was here, there was no one from my university who wanted to come and do the exchange, so I opted to stay for a second year. So I was here for 2 years, and that just really solidified it for me. So when I got back to the US and graduated from my college, then I was ready to come back for more. And it's now been over 20 years, and this is home. I do still have one foot in the US, but given the choice, I think I would probably choose to live here for now. It's what I'm comfortable with. Let's see, what do I call myself? That's the question of the day, every morning. I call myself Marci. um, I guess I'm a creative entrepreneur. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I've done a lot of work in the past 20 years with teaching English and helping people, Japanese people who want to study abroad, especially to the US. But more recently, I'm involved with helping people build websites and also receiving intuitive messages from spirit for people who maybe know that they've got a message waiting for them, but somehow are having trouble accessing their guides and need a back door. So that's just a little brief bit about me.
Very interesting. And do you think that has a title or a name, being a channel or messenger?
Oh, I would love it if somebody listening to this thought that's exactly what you should be called, and let me know. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sure if there needs to be a title for it. Maybe intuitive. I don't know. I receive the messages when I ask for them and make them available to people, but it's not all of who I am. It's one part of what I do during the day, usually in the morning. And the best time for me to work with spirit, consciously work with spirit, is right when I first wake up in the morning, and I usually sit with a cup of coffee and write. Of course, I have many opportunities throughout the day to be contacted. Sometimes I forget to ask. I forget to ask for help, and I forget to ask for those messages. But when I do, they show up maybe in the form of a bird or a spider or a feather, or I think spirit and angels make themselves known to me, and probably making themselves known to everyone, but sometimes they have to speak very loudly for us to notice.
Right. I hear you. So I would like to know how you first started this process of the actual doing the automatic writing, or how did it start?
Sure. I've been doing journaling. I think a lot of people do journaling. I do mine all on the computer. That's why I've got my fingers up here. And I found that the easiest way for me to write in the beginning, this was several years ago, was if I pretended I was writing to my sister. And then I started to pretend when I couldn't contact her or couldn't get a quick answer from her, I would pretend what kind of answer she might reply with. And then it quickly shifted into just asking and answering for myself. And I started to notice that it was much easier when I had my eyes closed. And then I noticed the next step, this is over the course of months, that if I closed my eyes and just let go, I could sense a word coming through, and I would type the word and another word, another word, another word, and they would come so fast that I couldn't quite catch the full meaning of the sentence. I knew what word at that moment was coming through that I was typing, but it wasn't until I opened my eyes and read the whole paragraph that I would see, oh wow, that those words connect. They do mean something. And when that started to happen on a more regular basis, I realized there was something else going on. And I shared with some friends on Facebook, and I was really nervous about it because I thought, this is crazy. They're going to think I'm making this up. And then there was the other side of my head that said, well, even if it is just making it up, if it helps people, isn't that enough? And isn't that what it's all about anyway, is helping people? But I struggled back and forth in my head with that. And I finally just posted, and a lot of people responded and said that it was helpful and they wanted more. So more and more I tried. And then I started to accept personal requests, personal questions for people. And that was a little bit scary at first. I wasn't sure what was going to come through or whether I'd still be able to do it or not. But if I let go and take myself out of it, I'm always surprised at what answer comes through. I think before going in that I know what the answer is going to be because, oh yes, I'm so experienced, I have so much life knowledge. But most of the time, it's nothing like what I expected at all that comes through. Mm-hmm. So did that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not like you were reading books on automatic writing or had an intention. It sounds like a very inherently organic progression, natural progression. And I have found like the style that you have shared publicly, privately, in the group we met in, that they were very, just the style of it, a very clear and very clear in a neutrality and thoughtful and supportive. And so I was a bit nervous trying to ask some questions. If you have any question you can ask, then I would imagine that it would feel like a lot of pressure for you, or again, like your own bias and opinions, interfering or something. I mean, I would imagine asking, should I take this job or not? Or should I marry this person or not? Or, should I have a child or not? I would find it would be a lot of pressure. How do you deal with that?
So it is a lot of pressure, but the best way I found to deal with it is that when people send in questions, I don't open them, I don't read them until I'm actually in the session. And that's the best way. I have no idea what they're going to ask. And so I'm already in a session, and I always start a session by asking a few questions for myself. So I'm already in the flow. And then I will ask for, this is providing someone has given me permission to contact their guides. I will ask for their guides to step into my circle and ask for their help in receiving a clear message. And I usually receive a message, just an open message first, and then I will go and open the person's actual question, the email. So I've already been connected with them. I've already received something about them, and I don't know what they're actually asking, but I already have something. And then I'll go and look at the question. And sometimes I am very surprised because sometimes they are very delicate, sensitive questions that I'm so grateful I didn't know ahead of time, because I would have been chewing on it all night, dreaming about it, trying to think of what I think the answer should be. And that's never, I think, a good idea. And I have to say that there have been times when an answer has come through and I read it and I didn't want to send it. I did not think that it was the right answer. But I don't feel like that is my place. Now, I have to stop and say that I was very clear and specific once I realized what was happening and what I am doing. I made a conscious choice to say I don't want any really negative messages to come through. There can be some firm guidance, but I don't want to allow that kind of negative criticism to come through. That's not what I want to be channeling. There's a place for that. Maybe some people can do that. Some people need that, but it's not what I want to do and be a part of. So what I mean by sometimes not agreeing with the answer is that perhaps sometimes I was expecting a different answer and it's this one and I don't feel comfortable with it, but I sent it anyway. And I should say one more thing is that when I do receive a message that seems off or not clear enough, I have waited, and sometimes I've gone back in and received another message and the wording becomes more clear. Because I do think, I mean, I am a physical body here, so there are some distractions, or there might be some distortions with spirit coming through. So I try to make that as clear as possible. But ultimately, the message is not from me, it's from something else. So it's for that person to decide whether it fits for them or not. So.
Yeah, it's a delicate line in a way. But obviously the people who contact you or ask you already are open-minded or are spiritual nature. Does anyone have to believe anything in order to get a message?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that I require is that when they actually go through the process of ordering a message, they have to tick a box that says, yes, I am allowing Marci to contact my guides. So whether they really believe that they have guides or not, whether they really believe in spirit or not, I'm going to receive a message. Now, what they do with the message and how they interpret the message, that's up to them. I have had people interpret messages differently than I interpreted them. I thought, oh, I know what this means, and I'll send just the message, not my thoughts on it, send the message to them, and they've responded and said, oh, wow, this means so much to me. This totally answers this question, and this is what I thought it was. And really? Because that's not what I was thinking. And that's the one debate I have, is how much of myself do I put into that response then? Because it is a message from spirit coming through, but it's coming through as I body, so there will be some distortion because it's the words that I know, that I've experienced in my life, that are in my head, and that's the only way I have to translate the messages into my vocabulary. So what I decided is that when somebody responds and they think they know what the message means, if I had felt something very different, I will offer that up and say, wow, really? This is what I thought it meant, but you need to go with what your gut instinct is. And occasionally the person has responded and said, oh, okay, I see. That's another perspective that I hadn't considered. But usually they already know what it meant to them. And it's okay what I think it is or what I don't think it is. The important point is whether the message gets through to them or not.
And have you gotten any really surprising messages for yourself more recently?
I think one that surprised me was I had asked, there was an organization that I wanted to get involved with that I thought would be very interesting, that could be very supportive for a lot of people. And when I asked it, the answer that came through specifically was, no, you're not to be involved. And I was disappointed and a little frustrated, but I've accepted it, and I'm trying to see where that's going, what that means. But most of the time after I receive a message for myself, then I feel like, oh, yes, of course. Yes, I knew that.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a little hard pill to swallow, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a little challenging question. who are what are spirit guides?
Oh, I'm not sure that I have the definitive answer on that, but I can tell you what I think of them. I I think they are probably beings that are at a higher level than we are, perhaps who have spent time incarnating and have moved beyond that need to incarnate and are now serving as guides to us, or they could be beings that have never incarnated and are serving in this role. I think that uh, for me, I receive a lot of help from guides that are, um, I would think of as nature spirits, whether it's a tree or a spider or birds. Those show up the most for me, although I've had even cockroaches come in and make their presence known and with a lesson. So, but, and I, amongst my group of guides that shows up for me, there are a couple who have been in this life with me and have now crossed over, who sometimes show up, but I do have one or two that are consistently with me that I'm not sure for myself at what point we were incarnate together, but I think we had some lifetimes together, and now they are serving as guides for me and probably some other people. So that's how I think of it. Does that answer?
Well, I mean, I don't know. We you know, there's many different answers could work, and I really don't know. I mean, do you know how many you have, for instance, and do you know who they are, kind of? Do you have their names, or did you inquire through automatic writing?
I,
And you can hear people say, "Oh, Merlin is my guide," or "Oh, mine too," or Cleopatra, or you know, and you think, how can 5 million people have the same guide, or you know what I'm saying?
I do. And actually getting a name has been the most difficult for me. I've tried in writing, but the thing is when the names come through, I question it, I doubt it, I don't believe it. So the one that has the most clear label is Sensei. There's one of my guides who the word sensei means teacher. It could also mean doctor or wise one in Japanese. Most of the time it's used to mean teacher. And because I'm here in Japan and I speak Japanese, it's a word that's very familiar to me. And when we are working with a teacher or even a doctor, we don't have to say their name. We can just refer to them as sensei. It's not like in English where you have to say Dr. So-and-so or Professor so-and-so. You can just refer to them, call on them with the word sensei. And that was the easiest thing for me to grab a hold of, and it's comfortable, and I didn't have to worry about what a specific name was. There are two others that do have names, but I right away I pushed the name aside, and that's, I think, probably my own difficulty or discomfort or disbelief or whatever. A name came through, but I wasn't willing to believe in it. So I still think of them as how they look to me. And I should say in my imagination, because when I have contact with spirit, it's not visual. I don't see, maybe someday I will, but I don't actually see someone in front of me. And I don't hear very clearly. Occasionally I hear things. Most of the time it's images that I see or comes through in words. I can see the words. So yeah, name, no. I've kind of put a block up against that.
So really, the whole name of the game is trusting and listening and seeing what resonates with your heart is kind of my relationship with it anyway. So last summer, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say that one other guide that I call on regularly would be a mountain. I have Mount Fuji that I can see right out my window here. So I quite often call on mountain energy. I grew up in the Seattle area where we have Mount Rainier, and as a young child, I was always calling on the mountain and asking questions. And And as a young child, I didn't understand that everyone else didn't do that. I thought that was normal. Of course, we would talk to the mountain. So not all of my guides are, I don't know, not always like a being. Don't always seem human-like.
Well, everything seems to have, I mean, I think we can also create those connections with inanimate objects as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever we choose to have like that, what I like to call the call and the response with, you know.
Oh, that's a good one.
For us, you know. I think it's just so widens people's perspective that you can just tune into different things and see how it resonates. I think I have Mauna Kea behind us in the painting. I love when I think about you, like that I'm looking out over the Pacific, and there you are with Mount Fuji, and here I am with Mauna Kea, and we're like, hi. That's what I think about. So last summer, I know that we were in touch with doing some tapping things, and you had just gotten an exciting contract offer, and you were like had a lot of possibilities going on, and then something occurred that sort of changed everything.
Yes.
Hear about that and sort of how that landed for you in your process.
Sure. So I'm going to back it up just a teeny little bit to give it some perspective. But last January, so more than a year ago now, my father and mother-in-law came to live with us, and so it really disrupted our household. It's just my husband and I. And my mother-in-law is now in a nursing home nearby, and my father-in-law lives with us. He is a very capable 87-year-old man who is a lot of fun, but he also is dealing with Alzheimer's. And it's at a stage where he can function on his own, but he needs some supervision. So I had already made the move to work at home, which is good, so that I could be here. But it took quite a bit of time to get adjusted. And what you're talking about, that contract that I had received, was just at the point when we had gotten to a level place, and I was feeling good, ready to work on my career again, and really excited about what I was doing. And then I went to the doctor with my husband for just a routine checkup, and we found out that he had colon cancer. And we were so shocked because he had no symptoms whatsoever, and it was stage 3. So there was a lot of things to think about, and I knew that I had to shift gears immediately. And I, fortunately, that's kind of a strange way to say that, but I'm very grateful to my father and for the experiences he gave me. But fortunately, about 18 years ago, my father had a brain tumor, and it was cancer, and he died within 4 months of discovering the cancer. It was very quick. And at that time, both my sister and I did a lot of research to try to figure out how we could help him. I've always believed in alternative or complementary therapies. And one of the books that I read back then was called Reclaiming Our Health by John Robbins. And I read this 18 years ago, and it totally changed or affirmed all the things that I thought about how we should be taking control of our own health and looking into other options besides what's just automatically available to us. So I fortunately had that. Now, when my father had cancer, we didn't have enough time, and I don't know as though he was as committed to looking at some alternatives. So we couldn't use a lot of the things that we learned, but because I had read the book so many years ago and had since studied many other things, when my husband found out he had cancer, then it was easy to immediately mobilize. And I decided right away that I didn't want him to do any chemotherapy or radiation. If he felt he needed to do surgery to remove the tumor, okay. But I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that he didn't do the other 2 things, which is a really difficult decision because ultimately it's his decision and it's none of my business. It's not my body. He has to make the decision. So the only thing I could do was make a lot of information available and put systems in place in our home to support him. And hold the space for him to come to that decision on his own, which he did. So he did have surgery and then chose not to have any chemotherapy or any radiation. And instead, we radically changed our diet. He doesn't eat any meat. It's mainly a plant-based diet. He eliminated salt from his diet, and he drinks about a gallon of carrot juice every day. Mostly carrot. There's some apple and celery and other vegetables mixed into it, but the base is carrot juice. So yeah, and he's doing great. He looks wonderful. So oh, that's like the short version.
Smiling the whole time talking about it, which is the opposite you'd expect because, you know, I remember it was a bit of a bombshell. And now here we are, 9 months later almost.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's pretty amazing. What do you feel like you've learned since then?
Well, that's a good question. I think to trust what I believe. It's been the hardest thing because even though in my head I believe strongly that our body doesn't need chemotherapy, our body doesn't need radiation, and that what we think and what we put in our mouth and how we move our body, that's going to have the biggest impact, the main impact, the ultimate impact on our health. I still get into fear sometimes, and so I have to allow room for that, recognize it, acknowledge it, but then stop, pull in, and remember what I believe, and I'm usually okay. And one thing that really helped both my husband and I was the doctor, a doctor we found here in the city we live in, who also believes the way we believe, and he shared a lot of the books that he was reading, and I was already familiar with and using tapping. My husband was not. And I was so surprised because my doctor, his doctor, not my doctor, his doctor had recommended that one of the books that we should read is The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And when I saw the book, I was like, wait a minute, I know that name. Why do I know that name? And I went home and, of course, discovered that he has done several videos talking about why tapping works. And I have seen those videos, and I knew about him via tapping. But when I asked my husband's doctor again, did he know about tapping? He had no idea about tapping. Nothing. I don't know if he even does now. But I was so surprised that was coming back full circle. Here was a doctor who believed in a plant-based diet and was helping us with acupuncture and all different things, but he didn't know about tapping, which was another modality that I was trying to introduce to my husband. And so fortunately, the book is also in Japanese, so we both read it together. I read it in English and he read it in Japanese, and it helped him, I think, change or think in a different way about his body and his power to control his body. Yeah. I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute here, sorry.
No, I know, it's a lot of information, and that's quite remarkable that this doctor would hand you that book and all the books. So how has the mindset been? Obviously you are referring to that mindset is so important. What are you or your husband doing, or what have you seen him do that you feel like has really contributed to so much positivity?
Well, I think in terms of his mindset, I would probably have to ask him, but just in observing him, I think he made a decision pretty early on that he was okay and that he was going to be fine. But there's doubt that comes up. And what I think the book provided was a reason why he could believe himself. There was some more proof, more description, more details about why it makes sense and why it's possible that what we think can have an effect on our body. So I think that gave him a lot of courage and hope to just trust what he was feeling, even though at first it made no sense. So, and what was your question?
So in light with this is kind of a continuation. What kind of changes did you make in your environment to support that aspect of it?
You know, I think the biggest changes we've made haven't been in our environment, haven't been, a, I mean, obviously they must be about mindset. I mean, we decided right away that this was not, it's not going to end his life. Although I have to say that there have been times when I've been afraid and I had to let go and think, okay, well, if if the big C comes back again, I mean, because even though you remove the tumor, it doesn't mean that all of the cancer cells just magically disappear. We all have cancer cells in our body, and our bodies, when they're working properly, eliminate those for us. But when the body's not in balance, those cells build up. And there have been times when I've been really worried that uh, he wouldn't take care of himself, or he wouldn't balance his energy correctly, and the cancer would come back, and then he'll just die and he'll leave me alone. And and that's really a self-centered way of thinking. It's not, ultimately it's not about him. What I was fearing and worrying about was me being left alone, and that was really hard to face. And actually, so what has changed in the environment is that when I got to a point to recognize that what I was really most afraid of was not him passing on, it was that he would pass on and leave me alone. I was afraid of being alone. I had to stop and think about, well, what is it that I want to do? And what is it that I'm going to be here in this life, in this world, regardless of whether he's here or not? And that's part of the process that brought out me sharing the messages with everyone else, and even with him, because he knew that I was doing it, but he didn't know that I was going to do it for other people. So that is one big change. I get up very early in the morning. I wake up at naturally around 4 o'clock in the morning, and I go out into the living room and have my coffee, and I do writing. And so that's something that both he and his father respect. They give me that time to do that. And it means that I go to bed earlier at night. If you're waking up at 4, it means you're usually falling asleep around 9. So that's a big change in our environment. I realized that whatever happens to his body, whatever happens in his life, sorry, I'm pointing this direction because his desk is next to me, so I think of him here. Whatever happens, I'm still here, and I have to be happy with what I'm doing and how I'm showing up in the world. So the environment change was that I put more focus on what I truly want to do. And the contract that you mentioned earlier that I was so excited about getting, first of all, I didn't have time. During the process of going through the surgery and him being hospitalized, and then for that surgery, and then coming home, and we had to change our diet. So I was cooking a lot more intensely. I just didn't have time to take on a new contract, and my mind had shifted. It wasn't really important to me anymore. So I ended up contacting them and saying, I'm very sorry, I can't do this for you now, which was very easy and very difficult at the same time. It was easy to do because I knew once the decision was made that there was no way, and it's not what I wanted to do anymore. But it was difficult because I was so excited about it, and I felt like it was such a win for me professionally. It was a project that would encompass all of my skills, and would be financially beneficial as well. So to then walk away from that and instead be left with, oh, what am I doing? That was pretty scary. But it opened the door for me to be able to provide messages to other people, and also to then explore the other passion I have, which is web design and making that available to people. So I'm actually really grateful to my husband for his cancer, because I know it's his process and it's something that he's going through, but because he went through that and I've been here witnessing him and supporting him, it opened the door for me to be more fully me.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the silver lining in everything.
Golden.
Down to brass tacks. It's like, what do we really want to do? We're here for such a short time. And I mean, it's so remarkable how you have been smiling the whole time I've asked you about this whole journey. So there's such a strength in you of like, it's almost like if you planted this whole new garden since the diagnosis. And it almost seems like you're very accessible? Do you feel like you're almost a point person right now? If someone's like, hey, Marci, my nephew just called, la la la, what should we do? It seems like you would just be so a fountain of wealth of support and information.
Definitely, I would not be able to keep my mouth shut. So I would give off a list of all of the different things that we used. I mean, I could tell you right now, there's a great website, Chris Beat Cancer. It's one of my favorites. I love to follow what he writes and what he puts out into the world. And he was a very big benefit to us. He had the same kind of cancer that my husband had. So reading what he does and hearing about his story was definitely a boost in confidence for us. And I would love to be able to provide that for people. And so you asked me in the beginning what it is that I do and what's my title. And one of the reasons why I hesitate to put a name on what I do is I have too many interests. I have too many things that I really want to do that I'm really passionate about. And so right now I'm passionate about getting the messages from Spirit out into the world for more people. And I'm also very passionate about doing web design. But I am equally, and depending on the time of the day, equally as passionate about getting information out about alternatives to alternative health care for people with cancer here in Japan. I think there's a lot of information in English in the US, but there's not very much information here in Japan in English. So if you happen to have a family member and you don't speak Japanese, it's hard to figure out who's providing services, where to go, how to get organic carrots in bulk. So I would love to make that part of my services someday too. It may be coming, maybe sooner than I think.
You really never know. I mean, the reason why I love asking the question of like, what you call yourself or what do you want to call yourself, so I see it like, I mean, I grew up in Europe where at 16, and maybe this was, decades ago, the same thing in the US, but where you had to just choose, I'm going to have this trade and this is what I'm doing, this is what I am. And you didn't really have much flexibility. And now you could just put out a table and have 12 caps on there and you can make up titles and go, you know what, this is the role I'm going to play today, or at 3 o'clock I put on this hat. And we're just in such a time to invent ourselves and all the things we love to do. And many of us are multi-passionate equally, and it's hard to decide. And I think that's really what inspires me, that we don't have to be pinholed in one thing. And so I kind of also almost like to push people to go, come on, what do you want to call it? What's the name you want to give it? And just more that we kind of can break through some of our own barriers, So another thing I want to move toward is, I guess, in your whole journey this year of like really more embodying your woo or getting the courage to offer it to other people, you also have moved to wanting to support others who want to come out in their woo and translate that into their website. So how did that come about, and how do you feel like why do you want to support people right in that niche?
Well, first of all, I couldn't choose. Why I wanted to provide that service is that I couldn't choose, and I was trying so hard. I had learned that we should try to narrow our services down as much as possible and then promote that like crazy, and that would be the fastest way to successfully launching your business and making it really stick. And it wasn't working for me. I couldn't give up the fact that I loved playing with websites, that I could fly out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and write a message from Spirit, or play with code on a website that I was building, and I was equally happy doing that, either one. So that's part of it. And then it also, because it was so difficult for me to actually admit and tell people that I was doing something a little woo-woo, which is crazy because I've grown up with it. It's not something that's new to me. When I was a young girl, my mom didn't take me to church. She gave me books like Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb or Jonathan Livingston Seagull or those kinds of books. That's what I was learning and how I was developing my belief system as a child. And it's funny, you asked, I'm going to back up a little second. We were talking about labels and pushing people to set a label for themselves. Well, I remember very distinctly as a child walking home from elementary school. I can still see the street, and my friends and I were talking about religion and what religion we belonged to, what church we went to. And I said, oh, well, I belong to Marci Smith religion. And I've never forgotten that. And my friends were looking at me like, this weirdo, who is she to name her own religion after herself? Wow. So if I were really pushed to say, what is it I do? I think the thing that I do the best and what I can say without any doubt is that I am Marci. I'm Marci. That's who I am. That's what I do. I do Marci. So, but why do I want to help people? Well, so growing up with all of these ideas and these experiences, learning about crystals, doing creative visualizations and affirmations, and learning about and understanding astrology and past lives, talking about all those things at home. But then when I went to school, I had to be very careful. I was very guarded. I wouldn't tell people what I really thought or what I really believed because I was afraid that they would judge me or wouldn't accept me. And even though when I got into college, there were other people like that, I was still really careful not to share. I've always lived kind of two lives, my public side that doesn't say anything about that, and then with my close friends and family, what I truly believe. And so when I finally decided to share with people about the light messages, there was so much fear. I was so afraid that people would think I was loony. But then who cares if they think I'm loony? And the thing that they might think is loony is what I truly believe. So why am I worried about that? But it took me so much to get over that, to step out. But the one thing that wasn't difficult was having a website. It was just pushing the button on, like, for example, on Facebook, hitting publish or hitting post or whatever. That part was the difficult part. Putting the website together was easy. Once I made the decision that I was going to do this and I was going to share it, within 2 to 3 days, I had a website up and ready. And that's something that I love to do. And I feel very grateful that I already had the skills so that when I was ready, boom, it could come out. And I got to thinking afterwards that there were probably a lot of people who were struggling with both. I mean, it's huge to make the decision. For some people, it's easy, but for some people, it's really huge to make the decision to come out and tell people what they're doing. But once they do that, then they have no way to share it, and they're struggling. They've made this huge leap, this huge decision to tell people, and then now they're stuck. Okay, well, how do I get it out to people? And that was easy for me, so I thought I can help other people get to that next level, making their service or their magic or their woo or whatever it is they want to call it, make it available to other people. So.
And do you have any advice for people who are right on the brink of making that decision, or they're about to buy a domain name and say, okay, I'm going to do this now, say if they're psychic or a healer? Are there any top 3 you would want to share with them?
I think everyone says this, but I'll say it out too. Do it. Just get started. Don't wait. Yeah, if anything, I wish I had started sooner. And the next thing is you can start simply. You don't have to have a big, huge, dynamic, amazing website. You can start with just a blog and get yourself going. And 3, just do it. Just do it. I know I already said that, but just do it. Don't let anybody else stop you.
Well, there's one thing to mind that you shared last year that I think is really important, and maybe you want to speak to it a little bit, is, oh gosh, now I can't even think of it on the fly, but the imposter syndrome, I guess. I think that fits in for a lot of people, right?
Sure, I have that every day. It's so funny because when I opened my email this morning, I had 2 different emails from other people I follow that were both about feeling like a fraud. So it's definitely not something that that only you feel or only I feel. We all feel that. And I think that for me, I recognize it when I feel it. and I move forward anyway.
And what is that like? Who am I? Who am I to do this? Who am I to say this? Or I'm not as good as?
Yeah, all of those, especially when it comes to, well, I'd say both. When it comes to doing the messages, I often think, well, I don't hear voices, I don't see spirit, I don't have these like quick downloads that just all this information come through. I must not be real. I must not be getting real messages from spirit. And yet, the information that comes through, I don't remember. I didn't write that. So, and the responses I get from people are really passionate, deep, moving, and make me feel like I want to keep doing it. So I need to just get out of my way. And when I do feel those feelings, then if I can just make space for it. Someone once taught me that when we are so contracted and so in our moment of feeling like an imposter or a fraud or in fear or whatever it is, we're so contracted. But if we can just imagine that the room that we're in is just a little bit bigger, and then the room's a little bit bigger, that contraction, that fear, that imposterness, that fraudness, whatever you want to call that, it might still be there, but the room we're in keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And somehow that doesn't seem as potent anymore. So that helps me a lot. Sometimes when I'm really in it, talking to somebody helps me, and I realize, okay, this is my own craziness talking. It's not really who I am. I'm really qualified. I can do this. And having a support group of other people who are doing something similar, I think is a real key, the sounding board. So for me, for both of the groups that I belong to, or both of the main modalities that I use, whether it's the messages that I receive or the web design, I have a support group for those. And that is such a key, I think, to help me come back to center.
Yeah, and that we're not the only ones who have these voices. You know, we're not that unique.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering how you combine your messages with spirit. If I come to you and I say, hey, Marci, I want to start this new website just focused on this thing, you know, what should my message be, or what should my look be? Have you ever considered asking this messages from spirit?
I have actually, for myself, for my own websites, trying to get out what is the core message that I'm trying to convey with that website. And what has been the most beneficial for me is at the end, I usually ask for some kind of image, and it usually comes up. This is actually how, so the messages that I receive, when I send them to somebody, I always send them a picture with it and one key phrase from the full message. And I find those images because at the end of receiving the message, I ask Spirit for some kind of image. And then I take the keywords or the little bits of what I can see, because I don't see 100% clearly. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure yet whether that will get easier or not. But then I go and look for a photo that matches it. And I'll go to any of the stock photo sites and I'll search and search and search until I find the thing that actually matches what I've seen or heard or read. And that is where I sometimes get the best hints for what I want my website to look like. And sometimes it's just what I need to shift it into place. Mm-hmm. It's what actually the light messages, the website I have for the intuitive messages is called Light Messages of Love. And it's a very pink image, but it's actually an image of a dandelion dandelion. You wouldn't know it if you looked at it, but it's a really colorful dandelion that has just been expanded, enlarged. Yeah. So, but that came through, the dandelion image came through in one of my messages. So
beautiful. So that's a bit encoded and layered and
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do you think that they're good designers, the spirit guides? You think they could say?
I hope so. I don't know. I mean, I could say that my passion is within playing with code and developing a site, to doing the build of it. I'm not as good at the actual design part of it, unless I'm getting help. But with my own site, I I recently had a lot of fun with a ladybug. I had a ladybug show up several times in one day, and then pulled an animal card that was also a ladybug, and I was like, okay, all right, I've got it. And then went on to find a beautiful image that includes a ladybug and is now the header for my current website. Depending on when you're listening to this, it might have changed, but I'm really excited about that. And I never would have chosen a ladybug for my website had I not received some kind of message like that. So.
Interesting. So you got some support there.
I think so. I think so. Are they good designers? Well, yeah, I think ultimately, though, it has to come through whatever information or hints that we're given still comes through the filter of our body. So are we good at interpreting the images and messages that they give us so that we can design a site? I hope so.
See, there is a connection here with your services. So is there anything currently that is a real challenge for you that's new and surprising?
This isn't new, this isn't surprising, but an ongoing challenge is finding ways to be okay with and caring for someone with Alzheimer's. And that's probably the biggest challenge that I have in my life. So I have this wonderful work I do. I have my husband who's getting healthier and healthier every day and is thinking more and more like how I think. And we have his father-in-law who's this lovely, bubbly, cheerful person and who gets up at 5:30 in the morning and wants to sweep the floor because that's his job, one of his tasks that he's been given, and he takes it very seriously. So whatever time of the day he wakes up, that's the first thing he does. So I may be in the living room in the middle of my writing, but he's coming through to sweep the floor, and I could probably stop him and say, hey, I'm busy right now. Could you wait a little bit? But I also don't want to stop his momentum and stop him from doing what he knows he can do and feels very good about. But that is a challenge, how to hold the space for this being who is losing his abilities day by day and still keep my sanity, but also make it possible for him to feel useful, needed, functional. And the word I'm looking for is it's not respect. I cannot having trouble pulling the word out, but I've lost it. Maybe I'll think of it later.
Honoring of where he's at. Is that?
Yeah, just trying to be with dignity. That was the word I was looking for. Dignity. Allowing him to have dignity, even though little by little he's losing his abilities. So it's really a challenge. It sounds unbelievable to a lot of people that I would hear have this dealing with Alzheimer's and dealing with cancer and working at home during the middle of it and being in another country and doing much of this in a foreign language. But it's just what I'm used to. It's what's around me. So it's, okay, what's next? Bring it on.
We all have these very specific recipes in our little scenarios that if we peek over the fence and look at that person's scenario, we're kind of like, no, I think I'm all right with my scenario. Like, I can deal with this even if it's not that fun, It's very interesting. Now, it's like the more that we suffer and live and navigate things, the more you realize, like, it's not an easy task for anyone, and that's where the compassion and empathy comes in.
So true.
So I'm super inspired by how accessible your messages are. So I just kind of want to wrap up to people that if they wanted to get to know you, you're approachable if anyone wants to ask you questions about dealing with a cancer diagnosis, I'm imagining, via email.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how easy your messages are to access. You have an easy form on your website. You never really have to have spoken word interaction. You write it all out. And then with your answers, you also provide, like you said, the really sweet little quote cards with the imagery, and there is an affirmation just for you. And I love them. They're so specific and sweet, and it's a very unique compatibility to receive the messages like that, and I really value them and your work, and have had really good experiences with them. So I highly recommend them. They're also very economical, and worldwide. So, and then that way it's a good way to get to know you and also pursue the website, which I may still be interested in. So I hope to get to see you in July, possibly.
I hope so too. That would be so much fun. Woo!
And I also look forward to reading your blog, and I'll be listing your website in the comments. Is there any last word or message you'd like to share?
Got it. Let's see. There was a whole bunch there that just came through that I would. I think everything is okay. Everything really is truly okay would be my message. It's what I come back to. Mm-hmm. We joke about it, my husband and I, all the time. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. But really, truly, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what's going around in our body, everything really is okay. It's okay.
It really is such a simple but such a powerful message, because we always think things just until that little thing is complete or fixed, then we can exhale, then things will be okay. And it's always going to be another thing if we live from that place. Mm-hmm. And, like my mom and I have had an easy path and have had to do this match back and forth. And I love it that she, one of the quotes she gave me was like, if it's not okay in the end, it's not the end. I think it's a better quote, but you get my drift.
I love that. I love that.
It's not over until it's okay. Right?
Yeah.
Well, big aloha, and thank you so much for chatting with me, and I'm so glad we didn't have any interruptions.
I know, that was good. Thank you to Mary for that.
All right, well, aloha, and I'm so inspired by your journey, that it's just been such a supportive year, this whole experience with you and your husband. So I think that's a really positive thing to encourage others with.
Well, and I thank you for having me here, and thank you for all your support throughout this year, because I couldn't have done what I have done and grown into who I'm growing into without the support of beautiful people like you around me.
Yeah, it takes a village, right?
Mm-hmm.
our spirit guide village.
That's right.
Too. All right, aloha, Marci.